One small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. It's July 16th, 1969, and on the moon. Neil Armstrong has made history in front of millions of viewers. He was the first man to step foot on the moon, though Buzz Aldrin would soon be the next. This order decided simply by the flip of a coin, changing the world forever and giving America a huge lead in the Cold War. The moon landing was one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind, breaking through many technological barriers, and a massive triumph in beating Russia in the space race. Since the beginning of time, the characteristic curiosity of humans has made us look to the stars in wonder, dreaming of exploring them, though the technology of such times would never allow it.
This spark was reignited by the Russians on October 4th, 1957 with Sputnik 1. This led the American Congress to create the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA, on July 29, 1958, for the purpose of coordinating all space operations out of the U.S. This creation of NASA led to Apollo 11 and a giant movement that changed the history books of the world.
Apollo 11 brought hundreds of thousands of people together and united America. The man who started the whole dream to shoot for the moon was John F. Kennedy. JFK's famous speech given at the Rice Stadium, officially titled, "We Choose to Go to the Moon." It's where the whole space race and journey to the moon with Apollo began. He stood before a crowd of around 40,000, each of them awaiting Kennedy's announcement of America's huge goal, with the famous words, "We choose to go to the moon, not because it is easy, but because it is hard."
But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were chosen for their flying abilities and talents. Armstrong had been awarded his pilot's license before he even got his driver's license. Aldrin had been in the Air Force, pushed to do it by his father, and he had excelled in it later, having a decorated stint as a fighter pilot in the Korean War.
In 1957, Russia launched the first satellite, Sputnik, a little over a decade before America would launch Apollo 11. Even though this was just a small spacecraft, about the size of a basketball, it still gave Russia a lead in the space race, and a large bragging point. This caused a moral decline for America, which threatened how the Cold War would go. America, however, was scheming something much larger, a manned mission to our moon, which would surely take the cake. To top Russia, America would have to hurdle some serious technological barriers. First, how would the food stay fresh for long enough and be plentiful at the same time? The answer came with the creation of freeze-dried food, which would give the astronauts luxurious food options like beef pot roast, lobster bisque, and peach ambrosia. It worked together to keep the weight of the Apollo 11 spacecraft very minimal, while keeping the astronauts at their top selves, consuming 2,800 calories. Charles Borland, who started working for the Apollo program in 1969, said that the shrimp was a favorite. It's got a little bit of spice to it, and the shrimp hydrates really well. It's just like having fresh shrimp with cocktail sauce, he says. Another invention born out of Apollo was cooling suits. With astronauts being packed and sealed into large stuffy spacesuits, they needed a way to cool them down, using around 300 feet of tubing wrapped around so that cool water could flow across the skin. Finally, after years of planning, in 1969, a successful mission came along, right? 10 missions and 3 deaths before left no turning back for the Apollo missions. As the historic Apollo 11 spacecraft was descending to the moon, terrifying words came from Neil Armstrong. Program alarm. An error code 1202 showed on the screen of the module. The people back in Houston scrambled looking through all their notes, with little time on the clock. Jack Garman, frantically flipping through all of his notes of the errors, put his finger on the issue, an overload on a guidance computer on board. They scrambled to fix it, and realized that the computer they were using was running a broken algorithm, and it was stopping some other programs to run that were crucial to the landing.
After a while of trial and error, Armstrong found out what was wrong and was able to fix it, stopping the peril.
I just see it as a beginning, not just this flight, but in this program, which has really been a very short piece of human history.
America's moon landing impacted the Cold War immensely. A large part of the Cold War was the space race. Russia and America had been going back and forth, with the ultimate goal of putting men on the moon. America's lunar landing proved that they were more advanced at the time. America's victory in the space race made a huge impact on the overall Cold War, and made Russia nervous because of the idea that America might be able to launch weapons from the moon. Of course this never happened, but the idea of it scared Russia enough.
Apollo 11 was just a start to NASA's great successes to come. Many other Apollo missions followed the historic flight of Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins. Apollo 1 through 20 were all attempts to land on the moon and return to Earth safely. During Apollo 1, 3 men, Roger Chaffee, Ed White, and Gus Grissom, were all sadly killed in rocket fire. For Apollo 7, NASA sent their first manned mission while putting live footage on television. Apollo 11 was the first successful manned moon mission. That was also televised, although unfortunately America lost its original moon landing clip, so this televised version is all the video we have. The following 5 missions all made it to our moon, though Apollo 13 was restricted to a flyby due to a malfunction.
That was in the past, but now we have learned so much about space. We know more about space than our own oceans. Technology has advanced so much that we are thinking that in the near future, we might be able to colonize Mars.
It was our pleasure to have participated in one great adventure. It's an adventure that took place not just in the month of July, but rather one that took place in the last decade.
During the Cold War, it seemed impossible to get one person in space. Either way, the moon landing broke so many barriers and practically gave America the win in the Cold War. It also proved America's tenacity, and that it is possible to go to space and maybe one day colonize it.
The moon landing presented plenty of barriers for America, ones that they needed to break if they were to ever make it to the moon, whether it was having strong enough rockets to carry them out of the atmosphere, or having suits that they needed to wear, even the food they would need, and the race with Russia during the Cold War. America broke through all of these barriers and paved a path to the moon, a path that had been haunted by the death of 3 astronauts, and with every flight, potentially many more. With even one thing wrong, even if it was minor, lives were being put on the line. All of these barriers presented in front of Apollo needed to be broken so that the astronauts could see another day, and so they could complete their mission, land on the moon.